There's a phrase often repeated in military circles. The first casualty of war is truth. But in 2025, truth isn't just obscured by propaganda. It's shaped, curated even, by systems that don't sleep, don't forget, and don't care who wins. As tensions rise between Iran and Israel, a quieter battle unfolds, not over territory, not even over ideology, but over perception. Because today, before missiles are launched or borders are crossed, the algorithm is already at work. On April 13, 2024, Iran launched over 300 drones and missiles toward Israel. It was the first direct military strike from Iran on Israeli soil. But before the first projectile took flight, narratives were already in motion. Telegram channels, Twitter bots, and AI-generated content flooded feeds across the Middle East. Analysts at the Atlantic Council traced coordinated bot activity to state-linked accounts within hours of the escalation. This wasn't new, it was just faster, more targeted, and in many ways harder to trace. According to a 2023 report from NATO Strategic Communications Center of Excellence, AI-generated disinformation campaigns have moved from experimental to operational. They don't just amplify stories, they create entire ecosystems of false engagement, likes, comments, shares, to give synthetic narratives the appearance of organic consensus. And in times of crisis, perception spreads faster than facts. It's not just the bots, it's the design. AI-driven recommendation engines pick up the heat. Emotionally charged posts are elevated. Nuance gets buried. In its place, certainty, outrage, and false familiarity. Social platforms have become battlefields, not by intent, but by design. TikTok, Instagram, X. These aren't just entertainment hubs. They are predictive systems tuned to maximize engagement. And in the fog of conflict, that often means surfacing the most extreme, emotional content. Researchers from the University of Zurich published a study in 2022 showing that algorithmic timelines, especially during geopolitical events, tend to elevate content that reinforces tribal identities and moral outrage. Not because it's accurate, but because it holds attention. During the recent Iran-Israel escalation, viral clips circulated of scenes from unrelated wars, repurposed with new captions. AI-enhanced voiceovers, synthetic satellite images, and altered headlines blurred the line between reality and fiction. And once belief takes hold, correction rarely catches up. A report from the Rand Corporation notes that disinformation today is less about falsehood and more about framing. The goal isn't always to convince you of a lie. Sometimes it's just to exhaust your ability to discern. Meanwhile, on the kinetic front, AI is playing a different role. In May 2023, the New York Times reported that Israel had begun using AI-assisted target selection software, notably systems known as Lavender and Gospel, to generate strike lists during operations in Gaza. While human officers reportedly reviewed the final decisions, the software pre-processed targets based on vast data inputs, movement patterns, communication log, geolocation metadata. The Israeli Defense Forces described it as a force multiplier. Critics warned that speed can come at the expense of scrutiny. The journalist Yuval Abraham noted that during one escalation, the Lavender system marked 37,000 potential targets in Gaza. He quoted a source involved in the operations. "We were no longer looking at who this person is, just at what phone number they had, and whether it matched the criteria." This isn't isolated. The US Department of Defense has committed billions toward Joint All-Domain Command and Control, JADC2, a project to integrate AI into battlefield decision-making. It isn't about removing humans from the loop, it's about shrinking the loop until human input becomes impractical. And that redefines not just how decisions are made, but who is accountable when they go wrong. Iran doesn't have the same access to Silicon Valley infrastructure, but it has adapted. Cyber operations, information warfare, and asymmetric digital influence have become central to Iran's geopolitical strategy. In 2022, the US Office of the Director of National Intelligence reported that Iran had invested heavily in AI-enhanced cyber operations, including social engineering attacks that use machine learning to mimic trusted sources. The IRGC, Iran's elite military force, has used deep-fake videos and coordinated hashtag campaigns to manipulate sentiment both domestically and abroad. While less technically sophisticated than Western counterparts, their methods are culturally embedded, leveraging religious imagery, local language dialects, and historic grievances to anchor narratives. And in the age of AI, cultural familiarity can outperform technical superiority. One study from Oxford's Computational Propaganda Project showed that content framed in culturally resonant language, even if inaccurate, outperformed verified news sources in share rate during conflicts in Syria and Iraq. Iran understands this well. It's easy to think of AI as a tool of states, but that misses something crucial. AI is also the infrastructure of daily life. The same systems used to push wartime narratives are tuned, day to day, to predict our purchases, our moods, even our relationships. And when geopolitical conflict enters that stream, it doesn't just affect how we see the world, it affects what we think the world is. A 2021 study in Nature Human Behavior found that algorithmic curation could polarize users even when exposed to neutral content. What mattered wasn't the content itself, but the inferred emotional context the system believed would keep users engaged. So what happens when that context is war? What happens when belief is shaped not by conviction, but by statistical optimization? This isn't theoretical. During the early days of the Ukraine war, Meta and Twitter both confirmed that internal ranking algorithms were adjusted to prioritize trusted voices. But those voices were chosen by automated classifiers trained on previous engagement, not editorial judgment. In effect, machine learning defined credibility, and that carries forward. If AI is already shaping how we see and decide, what happens when it begins to act entirely on its own? The future of AI in geopolitics doesn't just lie in narrative, it lies in action. DARPA's Offensive Swarm-Enabled Tactics program, or OFSET, is developing drone swarms capable of autonomous coordination in complex urban environments. These aren't remote-controlled. They learn, adapt, and evolve mid-mission. The Chinese military is pursuing similar programs through its military-civil fusion strategy, focusing on drone group intelligence and distributed AI decision-making in battlefield conditions. In 2021, South Korea demonstrated AI-augmented surveillance turrets that could detect, track, and fire upon human targets without direct human command, a system currently deployed along the DMZ. The question isn't whether these tools will be used, it's whether we'll understand the decisions they make before consequences arrive. Paul Shah, a former Pentagon analyst and author of Army of None, wrote, "Autonomous weapons will force us to confront questions we've long deferred about morality, accountability, and the role of humans in decisions of life and death. When prediction becomes execution, the margin for error disappears." For decades, deterrence has relied on ambiguity, on the assumption that rational actors will pause, calculate, and avoid escalation. But AI is rational in a different way. It doesn't fear consequences, it doesn't second-guess itself, and it doesn't understand context the way humans do. In 1983, a Soviet early warning system falsely detected an incoming US missile strike. The officer on duty, Stanislav Petrov, chose not to report the alert. His instinct likely prevented nuclear retaliation. Now imagine that system enhanced with autonomous decision logic. What if AI decides before humans have time to override? In 2020, researchers at RAND and the Center for a New American Security warned of what they called flash wars, conflicts triggered by machine error, misclassification, or feedback loops between autonomous defense systems. Former US Secretary of Defense William Perry has said, "The risk of accidental nuclear war is greater than it was during the Cold War, and the role of AI in accelerating decision cycles is a major factor." In a world of instant response, the margin for de-escalation narrows, and the deterrent becomes a hair trigger. As of mid-2024, over 60 countries have publicly acknowledged the integration of AI into national defense planning. Nations like China, India, Israel, Russia, and the United States are investing heavily in predictive modeling, autonomous weapons systems, and cognitive warfare training, not just for battlefield superiority, but for psychological advantage. The Brookings Institution defines this emerging field as strategic cognition, the use of AI to influence not just action, but perception, motivation, and intent. And it's not science fiction. In 2020, the US Air Force launched Project Maven to integrate computer vision and deep learning into battlefield intelligence. But in 2023, the project's scope expanded to include social sentiment analysis. The same tools that monitor threats are now watching ideas, which means the battlefield isn't just in Gaza, or Tehran, or Tel Aviv. It's inside the feed, inside the mind. Jaron Lanier, a pioneer of virtual reality and longtime tech ethicist, once wrote, "We cannot have a society in which, if two people wish to communicate, the only way that can happen is if it's financed by a third party who wishes to manipulate them." The question isn't whether AI will be used in war. It's whether we still recognize the line between conflict and culture, and whether that line is being quietly redrawn by machines we've already outsourced too much to.